The executive director, Development of Educational Action Network says government needs to redesign and change school curriculum from knowledge-based to skill-based to combat unemployment in the country. He made the call in Abuja in an interview.
The initiative is development of educational action network. And our major objective in terms of educational policy drive is to see how we can support the development of skill-based learning activities as a way of the knowledge-based, educational learning system that we promote in Nigeria. And the essence is to be able to uh, bridge the widening gap in terms of skill shortage that we have within the society, which has, in other way, promoted a large number of unemployed youth that we have in our, society. So, yeah, the global system today is shifting towards green economy and green skill. And the issue is simple. We don't have an educational architecture that helps people uh, develop self initiatives or self ability to solve problems. We are basically people of academic, learned individuals, vast inability to read, write, but not competent when it comes to skill-based engagement. And that's where the problem lies. The world is not looking for people who only can read and write. The world is not looking for people who have first class, who are academically very excellent. The world is looking for problem solvers. And in China, that's what they had that helped them to advance. In Japan, the same thing. Even in smaller countries, Indonesia, even Finland, and other parts, who focus on building skill-based educational architecture. Even in Finland, for instance, they stopped school examination very long ago. Their mode of assessment of students is no longer based on how academically sound they are, but how technically competent they are at problem solving and social engagement. So these are some of the things we saw, and then bringing every of this to the context of climate change. The world is spending or budgeting so much uh, trying to fight climate crisis, something that is an act of humanity. People are responsible for the crisis we see in the climate change. The problem is now asking ourselves, what are people doing that causes the problem? Where did they learn it from? And then what instrument do the society have to build people's capacity, either in terms of behavioral, in terms of initiative, competence, and thinking? It's school. Every part of the world has school system. And whatever the school system cannot correct, it's difficult to believe that we have any other instrument that can correct it. Unfortunately, the world leaders has not been looking so keenly to using education to power development architecture. And this is our concern. So thanks, we now have a few organizations across the world who is calling the attention of the government globally to look at how they will invest in educational engineering that will reconstruct the behavior of human beings, especially people we are hoping will be living here in the next generation. Uh, it may be sad, but currently the world is already thinking that we at this level of us, we must have failed. And the energy we are building now is towards, the next generation. If we're going to leave a safe world to these people, we need to build a system that will re-engineer their competence, re-engineer their mind, re-engineer the way they think, and then be able to build a better world. And that is the essence of this entire exercise. to rebuild an educational architecture that will help, how do I put it, to see education as a viable instrument to solve some of the biggest global challenges and problems.
On the sidelines of a stakeholders roundtable on environmental safety, he explained that in some countries, students are not scored based on knowledge but on technical and practical competence.
Skills development necessarily do not center around formal school setting. And that's part of the total engineering of our educational development structure. So, yeah, we need to look at our society and design what works for our own internal development. And as a country, in fact, you may just discover that when we're developing skills based on local level solution initiatives, what works in the north necessarily may not work in the west. Okay, so globally, what people are developing is localized adaptive initiatives that are place-based. Okay, so yeah, communities have distinctive problems. So people in those communities has to build capacity based on their specific, geographical locations. So, for instance, in the UK, the global education perspective development, the curriculum is designed in such a way that anybody in any place can adapt it and it will function to their own system design for their, locality. Are we going to be able to come to that level where we'll have researchers who are invested on to help us curate these kind of models that are adaptive at, as many places as it may want to be, used. This is what we are. This is what we're looking at. The number of joblessness we see in our society is not a function. It's not a function of poor. I don't know how to put it. It's not a function of poor access to education. It's a function of systemic skill gaps built in our educational delivery. So when we say how maybe 30 million children are out of school, and then we count the number of children that are in school, the question we should ask ourselves is, what competence are we even building in those in school that differentiate them from the people who are not in school, except the one that they are able to read and write? So when we now breed people who are able to read and write, and they now come out of the system that help them to read and write frustrated, it's just a web, kind of structure. What people build in, the world is people who are not just able to read and write, but as they are reading and writing, they are developed in critical thinking ability, design thinking ability, creative thinking ability, and these three concepts are deployed into solution development initiatives. And that is why people can live anywhere and survive, because somehow they've been equipped with adaptive, competencies to live anywhere and create innovations that will help them thrive. Now, the thing is, we have people in the government here who work in the Ministry of Education. We have people who work with the Department of Climate Change. We have people who also work with the National Council for Climate Change. And then we have teachers. We have this is expected to be a council, development grant that will provide ideas that will foster individuals in these conversations to be able to provide more meaningful engagement in their different places of work that will eventually translate into shaping the narratives of our national education system. So some of the goal of the conversation is to look at in the global climate education commitment. Nigeria is not one of the countries that have committed to include climate education in their curriculum. And this is 3 years running. And then some of the things the conversation is looking at, how can we help the government build the courage to play, this role in, COP28 November this year. This is something that is, about 88 countries have signed on, and they've already started engineering the process of ensuring that, the arguments that, climate education is already in our curriculum is gestation, and intentionally now start working on structures to do that. We want to see how this conversation can provide, counsels that will lead to that. Another one is to see how teachers can start seeing themselves as part of the deal, because teachers lack currently the competence to even deliver some of these stuff. An average teachers in public school, especially in our public schools, they are elderly people who are not tech savvy, who all these new conversations don't even interest. So that is also a huge gap. How can we continue to support with valuable and reliable data around climate education globally that will, fix into our local context to be able to support the government? For me, the ambition is simple: support government to be able to do what is right as at when due, because timely action is key if we're going to deliver our people from the mess we are. I think there is hypocrisy of awareness. Yeah, awareness tailored to individuals, organizations, agendas, and initiatives. I think the action of the public in response to the awareness that we have generated so far does not correspond, because people have not even exhibited a shift of change. People's behavior towards environmental, saneness is possibly worse than before. The flood has, keep increasing, and the flood is not just a natural disaster much more, it's much of people's, behavior. Yeah, blocking the waterways continues. Indiscriminate waste disposal. You can still see people eating on and then throwing the stuffs out of the street. So what has changed in terms of awareness? It's just very little. And that is sad, because, I was giving an example. I was in a country and I was speaking and I said something within my conversation, and everybody just went cool. And then I didn't even know that it was me that was there. And somebody whispered to me that you use the foul, words, and I was like, foul words, which one? And he couldn't even say it. He had to, just write it that you said. We say this every day. We say this every day in my country, and it makes them say, no. It's so big. Everybody is just looking at you like, who is this? I was like, what? These are things that has been built within their educational system from childhood. So we've missed those foundations. So the adults we have today, we will need more than awareness to get, so to correct adults, you need deterrence, you need consequences. It is children that can be taught and their mind will be modified. But adults, their minds are formed, and that's why you see a lot of advocacy are producing very tiny results, because without deterrence, without consequences, adults are difficult to shape.
Okay, Caesar, given the fact that you said
It's in a very great danger because projection will suggest that the flooding system will keep, escalating. Yeah, because the actions of human are, continuously inflating the root causes of this flooding. Weather is going to continue to go a little extreme, and then we're going to be having more droughts. We're going to be having shortages of food. We're going to farmers are going to have more to deal with. In Nigeria, where we already have the implication of farmers' headers clashes resulting into some security problems, we may increase our armory in terms of weapon, acquisition. But if the root causes are not, faced squarely, we will continue to have those stuffs, and youth migration may also continue, because when all these things continue to threaten the peaceful, existence of people, they are going to be looking for places where they can safely, be. And job skills are going to continue to evade, because educational system is going to continue to be the same, it used to be if no actions are taken. And yes, we continue to produce, readers and people who have ability to speak, read, and write, but have no ability to provide initiative that can make them survive. So it's a multiple of, complications that will keep making only few who will struggle to escape the bracket, but the wages and the weight of those who are unable to get out of that bracket will eventually continue to consume the few who are able to escape.
so action point for government, what's your thought?
So the government need to set up modalities and invest heavily in building structures that will re-engineer our school curriculum, first from knowledge-based to skill-based. That is very key. In fact, fighting unemployment, I would recommend that as number one on the table. People must learn skills from school and not when they get out of school. And secondly, development designs should start focusing on how to work with teachers, which also we are hoping that government will build structure around to help teachers to modernize in their teaching deliveries. It is beyond just teaching people how to read, and write. Teachers pass competence to, pupils. Teachers pass skills to pupils. So when teachers they themselves lack the ability to dispense this type of life-changing procedures, then it's going to be a problem. Those are some of the two key things we are hoping for.
Ms. Onyekachi Chukwu, an associate of Clear Technology Hub, identified agencies of government to lead the drive and recommended an interagency approach.
Is government institutions that should be leading this ambition and the strategies they should apply to achieve climate education mainstreaming into school curriculum. So the key institutions of government that we mapped out to play the role, we have the Ministry of Education, both federal, state, parastatal MDAs, Ministry of Environment, National Orientation Agency, National Broadcasting Commission, National Environmental Standard Regulation Enforcement Agency, Ministry of Finance, State Universal Basic Education Board, Nigerian Educational Research and Development Council, and National Climate Council.
Also, Ms. Caroline Olaita, a senior education officer who spoke on the role of teachers in climate education delivery in schools, said that teachers must be trained to understand the curriculum and the concepts of the subject matter.
Firstly, we have to understand the curriculum itself. Yeah. The curriculum must be understood first. Then the second thing is the teachers impacting the knowledge of this curriculum to the students, because they are actually the future. So we are trying to sustain our future. So they must be, the teachers will be able to impact this knowledge across to them. Number three, we talked about critical thinking of activities that children can engage in, like awareness, sensitization, that we need to make them aware of climate change. That is actually real. It's real. And for the earth not to die, we must pass across this knowledge. Yeah. Then number four, we talk about the activities. We talk about field trip, we talk about tree planting, waste management, recycling, gardening, etc. Then when we came to the challenges that teachers face or may in the delivery of climate education. Number one, there is inadequate training of teachers on the subject of climate change education. There is insufficient funding. There is low interest and lack of motivation, because we've had cases of where they started the tree planting and then there was no motivation and then the tree died and things like that.
Are you a teacher?
So, like, I want to give an example of something we did last 2 weeks ago in junior secondary school, Jabi 2. So what we did was to come up with a roster. We got the students involved. We got champions among them. Then we got teachers to supervise, and then the principal itself, we got him involved, so that anyhow, this tree must grow and must not die. And then we told them the benefits of what they too can gain from making sure they nurture this tree planting very well, to make sure that, and then they too can derive financial benefits from it. Then we talk about low practice of the curriculum itself. There's low practice of the how do we put this one? We talked about the child not utilizing the curriculum itself. Yes. So then the last one there is shortage of manpower on the practice of climate change education, etc. Teachers, consultants. So they are needed. Those are challenges that are being faced. Then the last one there is the solution. I'm coming. Let me just make sure that you ask. Solutions to, that's teacher for you. Solutions to challenges. Training and retraining of teachers in climate change education. Then sourcing of funding from international bodies like NGOs and INGOs, individual bodies and government bodies. Then availability of resource materials, e.g. textbooks, the seedlings, all those, they are all needed. Then we talk about collaboration of other schools and partners. And lastly, recruitment on teachers who have understanding of the climate change education. And then our summary was that there cannot be any progress on climate change education without well-equipped teachers. So, and therefore, we recommended regular training and retraining of teachers for climate change education.
For her part, a senior program officer at Sidani said that for Nigeria to join the Committee of Nations already making progress on climate education, a clear strategy has to be put in place.
The thought of convening sectoral climate change actors consultations to foster a robust conversation towards enlisting climate education in the COP28 agenda for Nigeria. The reason that we had thought of this is because we believe that we don't want to use one size fits all. There might be different interest groups that have different inputs to make into how the education conversation should go in COP, coming from both the formal sector and the informal sector. Because the way we thought of it is that climate education should not be limited to, schools in quote. It should really like cover everything formal sector and everything informal sector. And then one of the things that this is really like summarized and high level, so in case there's no deep dives. So one of the things we now thought of was as an output from convening these different interest groups across the country will be to develop a plan of action and identify relevant stakeholders. Because we understand that the people that we will consult with might necessarily not be the people that will champion this agenda in COP28. So we said, okay, we'll develop a plan of action that will contain certain elements, and then the corresponding relevant stakeholders, people that we know that can influence this conversation in COP28. So the first thing, like I said, was that we will convene a climate change consultation nationwide. The second thing we now moved on to was, after all of this, we would engage key government stakeholders, including MDAs. So I'm not going to flog this point a lot, because a lot of us spoke a lot to MDAs and parastatals and their roles and responsibilities. But what we now thought of was, we would engage key government stakeholders who can influence this agenda at COP28. One thing we know for sure is that the NCC is the designated national focal point from the UNFCCC to every COP. So, number one on our relevant stakeholders or offices that we work with here is the NCC, because we also think that they should drive the synergy and the synergy processes that these consultations would involve. They will also work with the Federal Ministry of Environment. A lot of us already talked about it. The Federal Ministry of Education, the NAS, National Assembly. The reason we included them is because beyond the fact that they are the policy-making arm and then they can influence education policies in Nigeria, sometimes some of them are actually delegated to attend COPs, and then we want that when they go to COPs in that capacity, maybe with the presidency or whichever office they are going, they're also able to speak to the fact that I am from so office, I am responsible for making decisions in my home country, and this is why Nigeria wants to mainstream climate change education into its curriculum or into national development or what it might be. Then CSOs. So we also have informal conversation with CSOs because they might give us some perspectives that are obtainable at the grassroots level that we might not know, up here. Then development partners. One thing that we are seeing in Nigeria is that development partners, so example, UNICEF and UNDESA and all of that, when they come, they have a lot of actions in silos, so everybody is doing their thing. There's no central coordination, and then you find out that some of the things we are even talking about here right now, a development partner might already be thinking about it somewhere in his office that is going to execute for 1 year, 2 years, and boom, they get approval from the Nigerian government and they're already doing it, but then unfortunately it's not in inter-city states, maybe it's in 5 prioritized states and all of that. And again, the issue of climate education not now being a generalized conversation will come up again, because in some states are kind of ahead, some states are still behind, some states have not started the conversation. So we also thought of we should include development partners, because they'll be very keen telling us what their plans are, how can Nigerians come in, how can we ensure that everybody is on the same page. So eventually, if a development partner says, I'm working in only 5 states, we can talk to another development partner like, oh, you are interested in this thing. The development partner A already says they are going to Kano and Sokoto. Will you like to go to Nasarawa and Kogi? So that way we are ensuring that there's distributed interventions of when it comes to climate education and even the conversation in Nigeria. Then another office we thought of involving was the embassies of countries. So we know that there are a lot of countries that are already doing a lot of things around, beyond mainstreaming the SDGs into their curriculum. They are also mainstreaming climate change concepts into their educational curriculum, even in their informal sector, their fashion industry, their food industry, their agricultural industry and stuff. Some of those embassies, if Nigeria has a very good relationship with them, they might be open to share ideas and concepts on what they have. I mean, we might not copy them A to Z and bring them to Nigeria, but they might be willing to support, like, okay, if Nigeria wants to do this, we're going to help you in so way. We'll bring our technical experts to help you brainstorm through your process of mainstreaming climate change education and stuff. So all of these offices that we just mentioned, we thought that it would be very important for us to work with them in order to even say, when we go to COP28, how should our conversation be driven? How should our conversation go? And then the benefits, I've just run through them. It will enhance Nigerians' response to global climate resilience. It will promote mainstreaming and adoption of sustainability practices, because people are already like used to hearing all of these things. It will enhance the development of green skills, enabling access to green jobs and helping the unemployed population. And then it will shape values and attitudes, and then it will drive general innovation. Those are challenges and summary.
Thank you so much.
Also, the Bureau Chief of Enviro News said that members of the National Assembly have a key role to play in mainstreaming climate change into the curriculum to engineer behavioral change.
We believe that one of the key roles for our lawmakers or our legislators is for them to actually ensure that they carry out the oversight role very, very well. Because looking at these issues that we raised here, for example, climate change laws, we want these. If you look at the Climate Change Act 2021, I'm happy that NCC they are here. You will see that in that act, there's space for climate education. Inside the act, but it's not pronounced, it's not amplified. So it means some of these things we're talking about here, they actually exist in form of policies or laws, except that they're not being enforced. So for us, we believe that for us to actually achieve some of these climate actions we're canvassing for, there's need for the National Assembly or our lawmakers to actually carry out oversight roles to ensure, because now you say, okay, maybe we've gone to COP, or maybe we made a particular maybe law, and then nobody's keeping testing for the Ministry of Environment, for example, or education, and then nobody's keeping to what they have promised or what they have said. Now, who is going to ensure that, like Mike said, who is going to ensure that they carry out what has been written down from pledges or in form of action points? So we believe that the National Assembly must play a key role in ensuring that whatever law has been enacted must be enforced. Otherwise, we'll just keep discussing, we'll keep making more laws, and we'll see action. Of course, we also believe that there's need for capacity building for our lawmakers. That's the truth. Just like we're talking about teachers now. The teacher needs capacity building to do this, to transfer this knowledge to their students. So there's also need for lawmakers to also have this capacity to also understand these issues, to enable them advocate or even make laws that will actually suit what we're talking about here. I mean, you can't give what you don't have. We know, and we know how lawmakers, how they emerge. We know that difference between politics and professionalism. So if you're a mathematician and you are a lawmaker and maybe you are in charge of maybe committee on environment, we know that you need capacity to do that job. So there's need for lawmakers to other, and there's also need for lawmakers to also collaborate as one of their responsibility to to reach out to other stakeholders beyond just making laws. So maybe some of these laws they have made, they also need to reach out to all these stakeholders for collaboration and see how they can carry out or achieve some of these goals. Okay, so with regards to the laws that we think are relevant, to actually promote climate education, we feel right now yes, we have some of all these initiatives in schools like green clubs and all of that, but we feel that climate change should be like a standalone subject. There should be a law mandating that climate change should be a subject that should be studied in school or in schools as well. Must, not leaving it to just if you want to, like right now it's as if you want, you can do. And also, like if you check the Climate Change Act, even though there's space, there's provision for climate education, but it's not well spelled out. So maybe that law can help us break down how this education should go. Maybe there's need for us to make a new law that will mandate the enforcement of laws that already exist. So it's relevant for us to have a standalone course in school as climate change to enable us to achieve some of these goals we're talking about here. Then in summary, I think we believe, the law, we know what the law does. If the law is like the blood of all of these things we're discussing here. So if the law is not well articulated, we can't achieve all these goals. So we believe that all these things should be put into consideration so that we can, because we believe that if all these things are well implemented, we can achieve what we have done here today. Thank you very much.